Welcome to the Mark Prater podcast, where our aim is to connect our global family of churches with our executive director. Mark, a lot of the guys in Sovereign Grace have heard about the Fieles Conference in Mexico. You've mentioned it at pastors' conferences and elsewhere. You actually had the opportunity to attend last week's Fieles Conference in Mexico. What was it like?
I did. It was in Juarez, Mexico, at Iglesia Gracia Soberana, the church led by Carlos Contreras, last Wednesday through Friday. It was an outstanding conference in just a number of ways. First of all, Carlos actually had to close registration at 400 because they just ran out of space. That shows you the interest. And there are pastors that traveled from 23 different states in Mexico. Now, to give some proportion to that, there's a total of 31 states in Mexico. So 23 tells you that the majority of Mexico is represented at this conference, which really encouraged Carlos and the Mexico leadership team there. They were so encouraged by that. In addition to pastors traveling from Mexico, we had pastors there from Costa Rica, from Bolivia, and from Colombia, just to name some nations. And the theme really of the conference was really the grace of God. And I think sometimes can forget about gospel-centered preaching that holds out the grace of God that we have in Christ. We can forget about that in Sovereign Grace, that it actually is a part of who we are. But for someone who's hearing that for the first time, it's transforming. And so I talked to people there where they just thought, I've never heard gospel preaching like this. I've never heard an emphasis on grace like this. And they were built up in Christ as a result of the preaching. So it was just a great conference. Carlos spoke. Miguel Nunez, who's not a part of Sovereign Grace, but sort of the reformed voice in the Latin American world. He spoke. A guy by the name of Kiki Torres, who is not a part of Sovereign Grace, but a really good friend of Sovereign Grace. Brian Chappell was there. He was kind enough to accept the invitation, and he spoke twice and did a breakout session. It was good to hear him preach, obviously. Those were just some of the speakers that spoke. I'm sorry, Jeff Purswell and Bob Coughlin. They just did a great job of preaching as well. So it's just a wonderful conference. There's something happened during the conference that was something I don't think I'll ever forget. So the conference was Wednesday through Friday. On Thursday afternoon, basically gang violence broke out in Juarez, and eventually it spilled over into other cities in Mexico on Thursday and Friday. So in Juarez, there was a gang fight in a prison. Someone was shot. So obviously someone smuggled a gun in, and that violence spilled over in the streets. Members of those gangs, they just began to randomly kill people. On Thursday evening, I believe 11 people died out on the street. They were also firebombing retail establishments and restaurants. So basically, the whole city had to shut down on Thursday evening, and pretty much was that way on Friday as well. And so Carlos is, working with his leadership team of Helman Avila and Abelardo Munoz and Manolo Quintel. And they wisely decided, we're going to continue with this conference and be careful, be wise, but let's just trust God. And so after Miguel Nunez spoke on Thursday evening, he made that announcement. And then he wisely, this was great leadership on Carlos' part, he had Kiki Torres come up and just lead a time of prayer from Psalm 27. So he prayed, and then he said to the people, to the audience, just begin to share how God has answered prayers for you. And so there would be things that you might expect, that when I had cancer, God healed me. But there are a couple of folks that mentioned things that just, obviously gripped my attention. There's just a couple right behind where I was seated. And she said, when my brother was kidnapped by the gangs, we prayed and God had him released. And then right after that followed a man who said, when I was kidnapped by the gangs, I prayed and God was able to work in a way that I was released. I learned later that man is a pastor who actually is leading a church that is interested in becoming a part of Sovereign Grace. Amazing. So it was, I just, when those things are being said, I just thought, I've never been in a prayer meeting like this before. And it's a reminder for us, especially here in the States, of what our brothers face in doing gospel ministry in different parts of the world.
Right.
And we've got to not only pray for them, just be grateful for their faith. I was so grateful for
Yeah.
Carlos's faith in leading so well. And the conference continued. We finished the entire conference as planned, and everybody was safe, and it was great. So I just thank God for him, and it was just it was a wonderful way, not in addition to the preaching of the grace of God, to actually experience the grace of God in His
Mm.
protection as the conference continued.
It's excellent. What a powerful story.
Mm.
And for my part, I'm grateful that you didn't get kidnapped, Mark.
Yeah, me
Otherwise,
too.
this podcast might be a little bit different.
Right.
So, but a bunch of stuff was going on there. As you mentioned, there was a number of pastors from different parts of not just Mexico, but even Costa Rica.
Mhm.
And you had a meeting with some of them, I believe. Tell us about that.
Yeah, first of all, there were four pastors there from Colombia, a
Mm.
church in Barranquilla. Two of the pastors there that have now expressed, or actually have formally said, we want to be adopted in Sovereign Grace. And then Jacobus Aldana and his wife were there. Jacobus leads a church in Santa Marta, Colombia, and
Mm.
he has finished the ordination, Sovereign Grace ordination. Josela will be
Wow.
there in December for the ordination service, and that will become a full
Excellent.
partner church in Sovereign Grace. So it was just great to see them and interact with them. And then Joselo and Rich led a lunch for Costa Rica pastors that I was able to attend and participated in some. So a little bit of history of Costa Rica. We've had a church in Cartago for some time, a partner church led by Alan Mange. We've had two churches that have become candidate churches, one in San Jose and one in Playa Azul, Costa
Mm.
Rica. So we just thought we got three or four pastors down there. We go to this lunch. There are 15 pastors from Costa
Mm.
Rica, all of them interested in Sovereign Grace. And so we're like, whoa, what happened in Costa Rica? So there's a lot of interest in Costa Rica. So most of the interest is if you think about Latin America, there's so many churches interested in Mexico. If you move outside of Mexico, Costa Rica would now be the next nation who has a larger number of churches that are interested in and will begin to pursue
Mm.
partnership with Sovereign Grace. So that was just a very encouraging lunch to be a part
Yes.
of.
That is encouraging. Well, thank you, Mark, for the good report, the update. It is gratifying, as always, to hear about how Jesus is building his church globally and how we get to participate in a small way in what God is doing across the globe. So thank you for your efforts, Mark. Thank you, everyone, for watching or reading. We'll see you here next week, Lord willing. Bye for now.
Thank you for watching. If you have questions or comments, Mark would love to hear from you. For more videos like this, hit subscribe on YouTube or by email at markkprater.com.